They don't want you to know the full story. What if the most scandalous event in cosmic history was deliberately edited, its most explosive chapters locked away? For 2,000 years, a forbidden testimony has waited, a narrative so dangerous it threatened the foundations of empires and faiths. This is not myth, this is evidence. You're about to enter the sealed archives of heaven and earth, to uncover what really happened when celestial beings crossed an unthinkable line. The story you know is a shadow. The truth is a shockwave. Your journey into the heart of the forbidden begins now. Picture a sealed vault beneath a desert monastery. Inside, a manuscript older than any gospel, its ink whispering secrets that could unravel centuries of doctrine. This is the Book of Enoch, not the sanitized legend, the raw, unedited testimony, the story of the Watchers, the Bene Elohim, the sons of Godis, not a sidebar. It is the primal rupture, the moment the divine and human worlds bled into each other with catastrophic consequences. Genesis gives us two cryptic verses, but Enoch gives us the crime scene report. You were made for this truth. You feel the gaps in the official story. A mountain called Hermon, 200 celestial beings, an oath, a descent, the taking of wives. This is where it all begins. The first forbidden knowledge wasn't apple from a tree, it was entire disciplines of heaven, taught to humankind by rebel angels. Metallurgy, sorcery, astronomy, cosmetics. They gave humanity the tools of power and corruption, and for that, they were damned. But why? What was so terrifying about this knowledge that heaven unleashed utter annihilation? The lie is that this is just a fable. The truth is that it's the key to understanding our world's deepest scars. If something in you recognizes this truth and you want more revelations like this, leave a comment and stay with this story until the end. Your reaction tells me to keep opening these doors for you. The question is, are you ready to see what was in that forbidden curriculum? To understand the fall, you must first see the height. Imagine the cosmos before the rupture. Not a static heaven, but a dynamic, layered reality. The Watchers weren't lowly angels. They were a distinct order, sentinels assigned to watch over the nascent human world. They stood at the boundary, the veil between realms. They saw the daughters of men, and something in their celestial hearts broke, or perhaps ignited. The text says lust, but the ancient word carries a heavier meaning, a catastrophic yearning, a desire to penetrate and possess creation itself. This wasn't mere rebellion, it was a hybridization project. A deliberate, premeditated contamination of the genetic and spiritual orders. Mount Hermon becomes ground zero. They swear an oath, binding themselves to this treason. They descend, and they take. The imagery is violent, possessive. But the real crime is the knowledge transfer. They become Promethean figures, but with a dark agenda. They don't just give fire, they give the blueprint for weapons, the secrets of manipulating nature and spirit. They create a hybrid race, the Nephilim, the giants, the mighty men of old. The world tips into chaos. But here's what they don't tell you. This was a calculated invasion. This was an attempt to seize the project of creation from within. You're seeing the first spiritual war, fought not with swords in heaven, but with seed and science on earth. The stage is set, the lines are crossed, the clock is ticking towards judgment, and the witnesses are about to start talking. Heaven has an architecture, a hierarchy, a law. The Watchers didn't just break a rule, they shattered the fundamental structure of reality. They violated the separation of kinds, the sacred boundary between spirit and flesh, celestial and terrestrial. In the divine order, each realm has its jurisdiction. The Watchers were guardians of that boundary. By crossing it, they didn't just fall, they created a metaphysical short circuit. Their hybrid offspring, the Nephilim, were abominations not because they were ugly, but because they were impossible. They were cosmic paradoxes, beings of two incompatible natures fused by force. They consumed the world. The text says the earth was filled with violence, a specific, consuming violence that ate resources, lives, and hope. But the deeper violence was ontological. It was a war against the very blueprint of creation. The knowledge they brought wasn't neutral. It was weaponized wisdom. Astronomy for astrology and control, botany for poisons, metallurgy for endless war. This was a hostile takeover, an attempt to redirect human destiny toward a new hybrid master. The Heavenly Council watches, appalled. The architecture is buckling. The very integrity of the human soul, the image of God, is at risk of being genetically and spiritually overwritten. The system is going critical. A reset is not just necessary, it is inevitable. The judgment is not merely punitive, it is surgical. It is a divine salvage operation for a corrupted creation. But before the floodwaters rise, one man is taken on a tour of the disaster zone. His name is Enoch, and what he sees will become the most suppressed document in history. The rupture is total. Enoch, the righteous scribe, is summoned. He is brought before the heavenly throne not as a defendant, but as an investigator, a cosmic notary. He is shown everything, the weeping of the earth, the cries of the human victims consumed by the giants, the defiled celestial watchers in chains of darkness. The testimony is visceral. The judge speaks, "You see what they have done." The sentence is passed. The watchers are bound in the valleys of the earth, in a place called Dudael, until the great day of judgment. Their spiritual offspring, the evil spirits that emanated from the slain giants, are doomed to wander and afflict humanity until the end. Their hybrid children, the Nephilim, are set to destroy each other in civil war. But the infection is so deep, the corruption so systemic, that a more drastic solution is required. The earth itself must be scrubbed clean. The flood is not just about human sin. It is a targeted sterilization of the genetic and spiritual pollution caused by the Watcher's invasion. Noah is perfect in his generations. His genetic line is uncorrupted, preserved in the ark. This is the cosmic quarantine. Imagine the scale, not a storm. A cosmic reboot. The waters from above and below break the boundaries, washing away the monstrous evidence. But did it all wash away? The text hints. The spirits remain. The knowledge, though suppressed, persists. The fallen ones are imprisoned, but their legacy, their forbidden teachings, and their haunting offspring lingers in the shadow realms of myth and nightmare. The cover-up has begun. The official story will be simplified. The full, horrific testimony will be hidden, but it survived. They didn't want you to know how close we came to permanent hybrid enslavement. After the flood, the world is a scarred patient. The giants are gone, but their disembodied spirits, the Mazakin, the harmful ones now roam as demons, the text says, destined to plague humanity until the final judgment. The forbidden knowledge? It didn't disappear. It went underground, into secret societies, into occult lineages, into the backrooms of empires. The Watcher's curriculum became the foundation of pagan mystery cults, of tyrannical magic, of the very systems of control that would oppress humanity for millennia. This is the devastating aftermath. The rebellion wasn't fully erased. Its spiritual residue became a permanent part of our world's atmosphere. Every act of sorcery, every tyranny built on hidden arts, every instance of cosmic rebellion echoes that first oath on Mount Hermon. But there is another consequence, even more shocking. The judgment of the Watchers sets a legal precedent in heaven. A courtroom drama unfolds across the cosmos. The fallen angels appeal. They ask Enoch to intercede for them. He refuses. Their fate is sealed. But this establishes a template. There will be a final assize, a great judgment, where all accounts are settled. Your world, with all its hidden pain and unexplained oppression, is living in the long aftermath of that first trial. The evidence of the invasion is everywhere in the myths of every culture about gods mating with humans, in the obsession with hybrid superbeings, in the ancient megalithic ruins that defy explanation. The flood tried to wipe the slate clean. It failed. Because someone preserved the true record, someone hid the books, and against all odds, those books would resurface when the world was least expecting it. The primary evidence exists. It is not one book, but a library of fire. The Book of Enoch, in its various versions, Ethiopic, Slavonic, Hebrew fragments. The Book of Jubilees, the Dead Sea Scrolls. These are not heretical fantasies. They are the primary source documents, the sworn affidavits from the pre-flood world, found in the library of a radical Jewish community at Qumran that expected the final battle between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. They believed the War of the Watchers was ongoing. When you read 1st Enoch, you are reading a text quoted by the Apostle Jude in the New Testament. It was scripture to early Christians. But by the 4th century, powerful men in robes made a decision. At councils, behind closed doors, they argued, this narrative was too volatile, too messy. It gave a cosmic explanation for evil that rivaled the simpler story of Adam's fall. It spoke of a pre-existent rebellion that infected our world from the outside. It had to be suppressed. The canon became a fortress, and Enoch was left outside the walls. But the evidence survived the burnings. The Ethiopic Church, isolated and faithful, kept the complete text as sacred scripture. For 1,500 years, the West only had echoes, fragments, rumors. Then, in 1773, a Scottish explorer named James Bruce brought back 3 copies from Ethiopia. The forbidden testimony leaked back into the world. Scholars opened it and staggered. This was the missing cosmological context for the entire biblical drama. This was the story they didn't want you to know. But the real shock was yet to come. What did these texts say about the fate of the fallen ones after judgment? The hidden testimony goes deeper. The 2nd Book of Enoch, the Slavonic Apocalypse, describes not just prison, but a tour of the various heavens and hells. The fallen watchers are not in a uniform hell. They are in a specific chilling holding facility, the 2nd heaven, a place of darkness and despair, awaiting final transfer to a lower, more terrible depth. This is celestial bureaucracy at its most terrifying. The Book of Jubilees details how 1/10 of their demonic offspring were allowed to remain active, under the authority of a chief spirit named Mastema, to test humanity. This means a portion of the corruption was intentionally left operational. Why? The texts imply a continued spiritual war, a training ground for human souls. Then there are the chilling parallels in other traditions, the Greek Titans, bound in Tartarus, the Babylonian Apkallu sages who brought civilization after the flood. Every ancient culture has a memory of this event, filtered through different lenses. This isn't coincidence, this is collective trauma. The most explosive hidden testimony, however, is the Dead Sea Scrolls' Book of Giants. It fragments the story from the perspective of the Nephilim offspring themselves. They have terrifying dreams of judgment. They seek Enoch to interpret them. They know their doom is coming. This is the ultimate forbidden perspective, the doomed consciousness of the hybrid beings, aware of their illegitimacy and impending destruction. These texts were not meant to survive. They were the classified files, and they point to a reality where the fall of the angels is not a closed historical event, but an ongoing spiritual condition, a war with prisoners and active combatants. The keepers of this truth face persecution for millennia, but they never let the flame go out. Who were the keepers? First, the Essenes at Qumran, copying Enoch on scrolls and hiding them in jars as the Roman legions approached. Then, the Ethiopic priests, preserving the Ge'ez version through centuries of isolation. Later, The Byzantine mystics and the Celtic monks who copied apocryphal texts in remote scriptoria, knowing they trafficked in forbidden knowledge. In the Middle Ages, the legend of the Watchers survived in garbled form, in grimoires and Kabbalistic commentaries, often distorted, but the core remained. There were those who fell for lust of the daughters of men. These keepers were often labeled heretics. Their writings were burned. Their names were scrubbed from history. They operated on a simple, dangerous conviction: the full story mattered. That understanding the origin of corruption was key to overcoming it. They believed that by knowing the name and sin of the Watchers, you could disarm their lingering influence. This was practical mysticism with eternal stakes. They passed this torch in whispers, in coded art, in folklore about fairy mounds and fallen stars. They were the guardians of the uncomfortable truth. If you feel that you were made for this kind of hidden truth, write in the comments what most shook you so far. And share this video with one person who also hungers for more. Your voice helps this buried story reach the ones who need it. Because the Keeper's Vigil was about to pay off in a way they never imagined. In the 20th century, in a desert cave, a goat would lead to the greatest archaeological discovery of all time. And the story would explode back into the modern world. The modern discovery shattered silence. 1947, the Dead Sea. A Bedouin boy throws a stone into a cave and hears the sound of breaking pottery. Inside, clay jars containing the oldest biblical manuscripts ever found. Among them, multiple copies of the Book of Enoch, in Aramaic, the language Jesus spoke. This wasn't a rediscovery of a distant legend. This was physical, carbon-dated proof that this narrative was central to the Jewish world of the Second Temple period. It was mainstream, not fringe. Scholars were forced to re-evaluate everything. The New Testament's references to the imprisonment of angels, the days of Noah, the war in heaven, they weren't vague metaphors. They were direct allusions to a story every first-century believer knew intimately. The Gospels' talk of demons recognizing Jesus takes on a new, terrifying light. These were the spirits of the Nephilim, the offspring of the Watchers, facing their judge ahead of schedule. The Apostle Peter's letter specifically says, Christ went and proclaimed to the spirits in prison, who formerly did not obey a direct link to the imprisoned Watchers. The discovery was a theological bombshell. It meant that early Christianity was born in a cosmos at war with the legacy of the Watchers. The resurrection wasn't just about forgiving sins. It was about defeating the parasitic death grip of the hybrid corruption at its source. This changes everything. It rewrites the spiritual map. But the establishment was slow to accept it. The implications were too radical. If this was the real backstory, what did it say about the nature of evil, about redemption, about our very DNA? The evidence was now physical, undeniable, and it pointed to a final, shocking truth about our own identity. The deeper truth is this: the fall of the Watchers is the diagnostic for the human condition. It explains the paradoxical nature of our world's sublime beauty alongside grotesque evil, technological genius paired with moral infancy. The forbidden knowledge gave us power without the wisdom to wield it. It corrupted the streams of culture, politics, and religion from their source. The hybrid spirit, the drive to transcend our limits through violation, through mixing sacred boundaries illegitimately, is the core of all idolatry. This isn't just ancient history. This is about the architecture of temptation you face every day. The lure to be as gods, not through communion, but through theft. The seduction of shortcuts to power. The obsession with transhumanism, genetic manipulation without ethics. These are modern echoes of the Watcher's oath. The theological bombshell is that evil has a hybrid invasive origin. It's not merely the absence of good. It is an active, intelligent contamination. Your struggle isn't just against flesh and blood, as the New Testament says, but against spiritual forces that have a history, a strategy, and a grudge. Redemption, then, is not just moral repair. It is genetic and spiritual purification. It is the restoration of the pure image of God in humanity, untainted by the illicit hybridization project. Christ's incarnation is the ultimate antithesis, the legitimate holy fusion of divine and human, healing the rupture caused by the illegitimate one. This framework makes sense of the cosmic scale of the gospel. You weren't just saved from your mistakes. You were rescued from a millennia-long hijacking attempt on the human species. This realization is either liberating or devastating, and it leads directly to a single, urgent question. What is your role in this ongoing war? Your calling is now in focus. You are not a passive spectator to this ancient drama. You are living in its final acts. The knowledge of the Watchers isn't given to frighten you, but to arm you, to help you discern the patterns, to recognize the hybrid spirit when it appears in culture, in technology, in spirituality, offering godhood without God, unity without holiness, power without covenant. Your calling is to be part of the restoration, not the corruption. It is to embrace your humanity as sacred boundary, not as limitation to be violently transcended. It is to wield knowledge with wisdom, with reverence. The early keepers of Enoch's testimony saw themselves as the plant of righteousness, preserving the uncorrupted lineage of truth in a polluted world. That is your invitation, to become a keeper, to hold the full, dangerous story, and let it shape your resistance to every form of spiritual theft. This changes how you pray, how you read scripture, how you engage with the world's deep myths. You see the demonic not as cartoonish, but as historically rooted spirits with a pedigree of rebellion. You see Christ's victory as the decisive counter-invasion that reclaimed territory lost at Hermon. This knowledge is your map. It explains the relentless spiritual opposition, the gravity of sin, the grandeur of grace. It means your small acts of integrity are strikes against an ancient, hybridizing tyranny. You were made for this conflict. You were placed here, now, with access to this once-buried truth for a reason. The evidence isn't just in texts. It's carved in stone, buried in dust, waiting for you to see it. The physical traces are everywhere. Go to the Bakar Valley, below Mount Hermon. See the massive ancient stones of Baalbek, the so-called trilithon blocks weighing 800 tons, moved with a technology that baffles modern engineers. Local tradition says giants built it. Coincidence? Travel to the plains where the Bible locates the Rephaim, the Anakim, the remnant tribes of giants. Archaeology confirms unusual, massive megalithic structures predating known civilizations. In Mesopotamia, the clay tablets speak of the Apkallu, 7 sages from before the flood who brought the arts of civilization. In Greece, the myths of the Titanomachite war of the older gods bound underground. These are not independent fairy tales. They are the cultural scar tissue from a global trauma. Even the Great Pyramid's inexplicable precision whispers of a lost pre-flood science. The most compelling trace, however, is in our own collective unconscious. Every culture has its angelic myths, its stories of divine human hybrids, its memory of a great flood sent in punishment. This is the evidence they can't burn. The stones cry out. The myths remember what the orthodoxy tried to forget. These ruins are the skeletal remains of the Nephilim civilization, the world the Watchers built through their human proxieza world of gargantuan scale and terrifying ambition, wiped clean but leaving its bones in the geologic strata. You can stand before these stones and feel the echo of that pre-flood arrogance. They are silent witnesses to the truth of the testimony. But these traces are not just relics. They are warnings. And those who control the narrative have always sought to explain them away, to label them natural formations or primitive monuments. Because if you accept what they really are, the entire timeline of human history and our place in a cosmic war shatters. The opposition to this truth has been relentless, systematic, and at times violently enforced. The opposition began early. By the 4th century AD, church fathers like Augustine were actively downplaying the Enochian narrative. Augustine argued the sons of God were merely the righteous line of Seth, and the giants were just big, violent men. Why? The Watcher's story was too similar to pagan myths, he said. It was embarrassing. It was also theologically dangerous. It presented evil as an external invasion that corrupted an innocent humanity, potentially absolving humans of primary responsibility. The simpler story of Adam's fall, confined to a garden, was easier to control, easier to turn into a system of guilt and managed penance. The councils that finalized the canon made a deliberate choice. Enoch was out. The full apocalyptic framework was marginalized. For over a millennium, the official line was set. Anyone delving too deep into angelology, into pre-Adamic history, into the Book of Enoch, risked being labeled a heretic. Texts were burned. Thinkers were silenced. The narrative was locked down. In the modern era, the opposition took a new form. Academic ridicule. The Enochian texts were dismissed as late, peripheral, mythological. The discoveries at Qumran forced a grudging reassessment, but the dominant theological systems, built on the simplified model, resisted integration. This opposition wasn't, and isn't, necessarily malicious. It is often the inertia of institutions, the fear of paradigm shifts. But the effect is the same. A vital piece of the puzzle is kept from the people. They didn't want you to know because knowledge is power, and this knowledge empowers you to see beyond the managed narrative, to understand the true stakes of your existence. Now you know what they feared. The question is, what will you do with this unmanaged, unbounded truth? Your decision is the climax of this story. You have been shown the forbidden testimony, the hidden evidence, the cosmic stakes. This knowledge is not for mere curiosity. It is a lens, a weapon, a key. You can now choose to see the world through the Enochian paradigmas, a creation scarred by a primordial rebellion under active rescue. Or you can shut the book, dismiss it as an interesting ancient myth, and return to the simplified, sanitized version. But if you accept it, everything changes. Your spiritual life becomes part of a vast, ancient counter-offensive against hybridizing corruption. Your hope becomes anchored not in a vague heaven, but in the assured victory of the legitimate Son of God over the illegitimate sons of God who rebelled. This decision will alienate you from some. It will make you question mainstream narratives in every field. It will give you a profound sense of purpose. You become a link in the chain of keepers. Your task is not to start a cult, but to realign your life with the truth of the war and the reality of the rescue. Speak of it, live it, discern the hybrid spirit in the systems around you and reject it. If this revelation is reshaping how you see the sacred and you want more forgotten texts and forbidden histories uncovered, say it in the comments and follow this channel. Your support is what makes the next revelations possible. Because there is one final, explosive unveiling, a secret about the fallen angel's fate that connects directly to your future and to the final page of human history. The final unveiling returns us to the prison. The watchers are bound, awaiting the great judgment. But the testimony reveals a chilling final detail. Their sentence is not annihilation, it is eternal witness. They are kept in their chains of darkness as eternal testimonies to the justice of God. They will be led out at the final assize, shown the full fruit of their rebellion, the entire history of corruption, violence and suffering it spawned, and then cast into the fire prepared for them and their ruler. Their existence, even in torment, serves a purpose, as a permanent monument to the cost of treason against the fabric of creation. And here is the ultimate connection to you. The New Testament reveals that you, the redeemed human, are destined to judge angels, not the faithful angels, but these very watchers. Do you not know that we will judge angels? Paul writes. Your final calling, as part of the restored, legitimate humanity in Christ, is to sit in confirmation of the righteous sentence passed upon them. You will witness the closing of the case that began on Mount Hermon. This is the full circle justice. The corrupted hybrids sought to judge and rule humanity. In the end, the purified humanity fused in holiness with Christ will judge the corrupters. This is what really happened to the fallen angels. They are in pre-trial detention, and you are being prepared to be part of the jury that confirms their eternal fate. The story that began with their illicit descent ends with humanity's glorious ascent to participate in divine justice. The hidden truth is not just about their past, it is about your future. You were made for this. Now you know. The choice of what to do with this knowledge, to bury it again, or to let it transform your life into a testament of hope and holy resistance, is yours. The record is now open. The testimony has been given. The keepers have passed the torch. It is in your hands.